Hey, welcome everybody to Freight Forecasting on this beautiful Thursday afternoon, coming to you live from FreightWaves headquarters, Freight Alley in beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm Mike Vincent, a freight forecaster here at FreightWaves, and joining me today is my good friend Zach Strickland, our Director of Freight Market Intelligence. How are you today, Zach?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me out.
Excellent. Hey, we're fresh off a 3PL summit, right, the other day, in case you missed it.
I did not.
Oh, good. Excellent content. A lot of stuff there. But today, obviously, freight forecasting. I want to talk about SOANR. I want to talk about data, et cetera, and kind of go through 7.0, the release that Craig Fuller, our CEO founder, went through for about 15 minutes there, about mid-morning on Tuesday, and go through it a little bit in more depth. But before we look at it and go through the functionality and what's there, you are a former pricing director. Correct?
Correct.
Manager, director? Manager.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know this because we worked together at the same company where you were. So there.
How else would you know?
So don't deny it.
Yeah.
But seriously, this release is something that you've been looking forward to for some time, and been a strong input into it, and a shouting from the mountaintops. We need this. This is what people need. This is a great tool, and so I want to make sure that gets across to everybody, and then how to use it. Right.
Right.
So, kind of why is it you were pushing for this as opposed to what we already have within SOANR?
Yeah, I think a lot of, especially people like myself in the former life, it's fun to look at lanes one by one, but most of the time you're talking about multiple lane information that you're trying to analyze quickly. That's the stuff that takes the longest amount of time. Anybody that's run a bid in their life knows that a lot of the work happens once you get everything into format, and then you have to perform some level of analysis on it, and that takes a while to set all that stuff up. So what this tool does is it allows you to upload your lanes relatively quick, then it spits it out back to you with a lot of information on it. So basically it
does the analysis for you.
It does the analysis for you. Obviously, everybody's a little different, and they need to do a little bit of work on the back end, but it gives you a nice high-level view of what that lane's characteristics are, and how to give you a little bit of direction on how to move your price in those lanes.
Yeah, excellent. So it's taken all the OTVI, it's taken the head haul index, it's taken even the tender lead times are in there, et cetera, and spitting back what is going on in those lanes in a predictive nature, right? It goes out 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 months. I think it goes out as far as 12 months.
For anybody that's used the lane signal, it's essentially that on steroids and with multiple lanes.
And with multiple lanes.
Yeah, there's a few added stats that they put in there. The volatility risk.
Yeah, we can get
score.
into those. I'm going to bring it up on the screen here in a moment. But
okay.
It's not only just there in SOANR for you. If you subscribe to this particular app, it's in the app section. We'll show you where to find that. Mm-hmm. Then you can actually download that raw data correctly and then slice it and dice it however you want to within your own systems, correct?
Correct. So you upload it via a CSV file, and it has your OD pair on it, and then it basically downloads it into SOANR, and then you can see it cleanly in SOANR, but if you want to, you can also export it back into a CSV.
Excellent. So let's do that. I've got SOANR pulled up here, and I'm going to show them where to find this, and we'll pull it up. We'll load up some lanes. So this is not it. This is a market volatility chart that you're looking at right now, which is also highly useful, one of my favorites. But up here under apps, in this section is lane scorecard, and if I click this, it comes up with a blank screen, and it's going to tell you awaiting upload, right? So you've got to give it some information. We're not going to ram it down your throat. You've got to tell us what you're looking for. So up here you have your upload button, and select a file. So if you don't have the file yet, down here is download the template, which you can download, save it, and then add your lanes into it, your origin and destination zips, and you can do 5 digits if you want, but 3 digits does it, right?
Yep.
So I've already got one. So once I've built one, I hit select file, and it's going to bring up my lane scorecard, and I've got Z lanes here, and I'm going to open this and upload. It tells me success, and here they are. That quick.
Real fast.
I've got them in here.
Yep.
So I've got all those lanes, and I forget how many were in there, like 30 or something like that. We put in here for this example.
Yeah. I think about 20 lanes in there.
About 20 lanes.
Yep.
Okay. So walk us through what we're looking at here, Zach. We've got all the different. We've got the cities, Atlanta to Dallas, or the market names really, and then the zip codes, the 3-digit zips that you're doing. So it's 303 specifically in Atlanta, Georgia.
Correct. And so basically what you're looking at is, we have it defaulting to a 12-month. It's going to give you a 12-month historical change. So 12 months ago versus today, 31% higher, than it was this time last year out of there in terms of rate. And then it's projecting about an 8.8% increase, or decrease, I should say, of that lane into next year. So 12 months.
Right.
away.
So you've got this kind of spark chart here that this is the beta version of the spark chart. You'll be able to hover over this and see the exact pricing in months, but this is showing you the trends. But here it is right here, 12 months. So the historical change in the last 12 months was positive 31.78% on the rate on that lane, 303 to 751.
Yep.
And the predicted 12 months out is an 8.82% drop. So that's the first two columns that are there.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can change it between 3 and 6 months.
Yeah, you can. Up here in the right-hand corner, you can see, and we're looking at median here, so you can change your length of time here.
Oh yeah,
1 month, 3 months.
We should elaborate on what that means: median, low, and high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you want to start with low, or should I leave it here and then we'll move it to the other ones?
No. Just I'll explain what that means while you're hovering and moving through.
Okay.
So anybody that's used our lane signal is somewhat used to this, but there's a little bit of, I think there could be a little bit of confusion over what low, median, and high means. Is that the low end rate? Is it the high end? Like it's not a range of confidence. It's basically your low cost carrier should be around this rate here.
Okay.
Your median cost carrier should be around the median line, and then obviously the high cost carriers, people with lots of overhead, your premier carriers across the country, the ones that you can think of as saying like they have a ton of bricks and mortar, those are the ones that it's going to cost them on average about $600 to $800 a day to operate a truck. The low cost carriers are going to be around that $350, $400 a day range to operate a vehicle. So.
Gotcha.
That's the way to think about that. So if you're, putting out a bid for, what you view as like a discount carrier, maybe somebody that doesn't have the service, that say a larger.
Should I name a few?
Yeah, I mean we've all known them.
The ones I used to tell people when I was a broker: if you select these guys, don't call me when the service isn't that good.
Exactly, because it's a balance between rates and service. So you basically can go in there and pick which one of those carriers that you want to see the analysis for.
Yeah, excellent. And when you download this, and here's your download button over here, you can click on this and download everything. You get the low, the median, the high, and you get the different predictive lengths of time. I changed it to 6 months. We were on 12. I've got on 6. You can go to 3. You can go to 1, etc. But we'll just leave it on 6 here because 6 is pretty interesting. What's going to be like in January, right? And you're still looking at a 4.12% drop in the median price carriers there.
Correct.
So if I change this, I can look at high and see that it's a 3.3%. Your low is 5.06. So you can change it. So let's move on to this. So we got distance and duration. What are we talking about there? Distance I can guess.
Yeah.
But duration, what are we talking about?
So that's the estimated amount of time that it's going to take to drive it.
Is that off of our HOS observations or?
No, it's basically just a net. Well, yes, it is to an extent. There's a little bit of that in there, but along with some standard
hours of service observations.
Yeah, the hours of service observations. But there's also the backbone of it is just basic average mile per hour traveling.
Yeah, that's the base.
Something that
it'll tweak a little bit with
something that Google has in the background of their travel.
Yeah, absolutely,
et cetera.
Yeah, I got you. So it's not like real-time traffic or anything.
No,
but it's hours of service and.
But there is a little bit of a traffic influence in the rate.
There is in the rate. Yeah, and we're getting there, right? So and distance traveled is from I would guess it's kind of like the mileage subscriptions you can have. It's from post office to post office, or is it center to center?
It's center. It's centroid to centroid.
Centroid to centroid. Okay, good. So then we have it in van, and the reason it says van, it's all van, is because
today
it's van. Soon Reefer will be in there as well.
Correct.
Gotcha. And then we've got this thing called volatility. What is it? This is a new one, is it not?
Yeah, so
Is
the
this a
volatility.
Scott Werland brainchild?
I think it's a piece of what we were using in our lane signal already. So we basically decided to break it out, and by we I mean our data science team.
Yeah.
By
we mean not us.
Yeah, Scott. But I think it's a brilliant idea. Obviously, the volatility is really an underutilized figure in rate analysis.
Okay.
When we talk about volatility, we talk about obviously like tender rejection rates, going from 5 to 15% in a matter of days, or and vice versa. If you have a very volatile market, you should price that lane higher, as an origin, because you don't have reliability in that market in terms of knowing, hey, I can rely on getting freight out of this market all the time, or sometimes I go from it's like a desert versus an oasis of freight. Like, if you're going to have a lot of volatility, the volatility score is going to be much higher.
Kind of like my yard in the summertime.
Exactly. The rain in Chattanooga.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. And it's not just the market. It's this breaks it down to the lane.
Yes, the
so
lane.
You could have Atlanta to a different market that would not have a volatility as high as 24, maybe.
Correct.
Or one that may be a 48.
Yeah. And so, I mean,
so what is 24? Do you know the range of these?
0 to 100.
0 to 100.
1 to 100.
Okay.
So the more volatile, obviously, the higher the number.
Right.
And then, that's something that, even though today's rate may be X, that means that, hey, they're picking a rate, but it's got a super high volatility score.
Yeah.
I'm going to add a couple of cents per mile just to make sure that my margin of error on that lane accounts for the fact that I can't rely on this lane consistently to have a consistent amount of freight in it. If you're, if you're a shipper or a broker, I can't consistently rely on carriers to show up where they are.
Which makes a lot of sense, because you could be looking at this from two different ways, right?
Yep.
If you're a carrier, if you're looking at a bid that is, say you're doing a bid on Atlanta outbound, and one of the lanes is Atlanta to Dallas, you would obviously want to know this, right?
Right.
But your ability to get back to Atlanta on a regular basis and not be deadheading into there,
Right,
would be important, and you could use that for then put in those lanes into Atlanta that you're normally in. How am I getting my carrier, my equipment or my capacity back into Atlanta for this particular bid, right?
And that's an important thing to note, because I kind of talked through 3 different use cases in one sentence.
Sorry.
And there's basically, if you're a shipper, broker relying on purchasing capacity, you look at this from the angle of how volatile is this market in terms of reliability for carrier activity? Are they going to be consistently there on time? Am I going to be able to rely on a very consistent rate out of that market, whether it's high or low? Doesn't matter. It's basically measuring consistency. If you're a carrier and looking at this from the sell side,
right,
you're talking about a market, if it's very volatile, essentially meaning that this market has a lot of rate fluctuations in it, because there's a lot of spot market activity. Carriers will not cover this market as consistently as others, so I can actually build some of that into the rate that I offer.
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
From the buy and sell side perspective, it's a similar use case, but not the same thing, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, because you have different considerations. As a carrier, you want to make sure that you're getting a price that you're consistently and you're good with servicing that customer, but or that shipper. And as a shipper, you want as fair a price or get it in within your cost range, right? Your budget, but you don't want to. You can't gouge, because then you've got waterfall issues in your routing guide later on, right? I mean, that's the whole thing we were talking about with the possibility of micro bids, et cetera. Really, a month ago is a smart time to rebid your contracted freight when those rates are going to be skyrocketing maybe in 6 months, and then all of a sudden you don't have any contracted carriers.
Well, with this, you can actually see you have a little bit of insight, at least into 6 months from now, about what those forecasted rates are going to be. So maybe you do throw out that 6-month bid.
Maybe you do,
because you run these lanes on here, and you say, what's the market telling me that these rates are going to do in 6 months right now? And that way you can say, well, yeah, I only want to do a 6-month bid.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, and as we automate these, those bids should become easier and easier, really, to have those, right? I mean,
for sure.
Because the time-consuming nature of it 5 years ago, forget it. You can't do a 6-month bid all the time.
Oh no,
it's all faxes and papers and
the markets. And it is a lot of work to redo a bid from the shipper and carrier side, and also broker, obviously. But so you don't want to just fall into that constraint all the time. But when things get really volatile and a little wonky, and say you're just running to the edge of your contract, your contracted freight, you need to make a decision. All right, do we need to do a bid right now? We're not necessarily ready for it. We're trying to still organize our supply chain. We got a lot of shifting demand, a lot of different preferences. We're retooling some things. So let's just see if we can extend this contract cycle. But wait, let me check to see what the market's telling us that this may look like in 3 to 6 months. And that way we can say, okay, let's just sign for 3 months, see if our carriers will accept a 3-month extension or not.
Yeah, and the beauty of this is it doesn't take a whole lot to rerun this.
Not at all.
And see where those changes are, right? Upload, download, boom.
Yep.
All right, now I've got a fresh update on those exact lanes and where it's going, right? And new data to add to my old data and start trending stuff out myself, right?
Exactly.
So we've got more to go through here on this. If we can bring this back up, we've got this next thing here, lane score.
Yeah, lane score. So, Kirk Purcell gets a lot of credit for this one. He used our SOANR data and came up with a way for people basically to prioritize how they look at a lane. So if it's from 1 to 36, closer to 36 you get, the more priority you need to place on it.
Okay, so like if you're yeah, exactly. So that's the ingesting of data into the different TMSs that was the integration and then that calculation that will show you that I got you. That's exactly what. So first thing in the morning, you run this thing up and you look at it. Boom. These I need to pay attention right here. These 1s and 2s here, I'm good. I'll look at those last. I've got a 36 here. I've got to take care of this. Gotcha.
Exactly.
We've got the next two here that are the origin signal and destination signals.
So this is our lane signal information. Basically, the same thing that you saw in lane signal, scoring the markets 0 to 100. When you have a value below 50, that favors the shipper. When you have a value above 50, that favors the carrier in terms of rate negotiating leverage. So if looking at a 53, 57, it's slightly valued towards the carrier. So if I'm a shipper looking at this, I need to keep that in mind in terms of the origin signal being like, well, this is a market that I don't have as much negotiating leverage at this moment that I do, that I have normally.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to wait a little bit so that this is especially valuable when you're talking about shippers that only have a few markets to target. Maybe they just need to rebid one market or one facility versus their entire network. There's a lot of different use cases here from the shipper side, carrier side. Of course, if you're looking at a bid and you pop up, a lane signal of 20, and you really need that lane to fulfill some sort of network need.
Yeah.
You need to go ahead and make your very best offer. Maybe run that lane at a 98 OR, whereas you're trying to run the entire bid at like a 95.
Yeah, and just on this screen we're looking at right here, you can see that. You got a 53.57 here, a 58.57, a 59.60, but, here's a 34.37.
Yeah.
Which kind of speaks to it, right? So that Fort Myers to Atlanta.
Yeah, no, imagine that.
Huge volume lane.
Imagine that. The shipper has leverage out of Florida.
That's bizarre, right? What's wrong? Wait a minute. Let me recrunch those numbers.
Yeah. But to that point, there's definitely better times of year to bid on lanes like this.
Yes, absolutely.
You can, increase your rates. And again, if you're talking about GRIs, you can use this for those carriers out there that do implement GRIs.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, I know that in 12 months, we're going to have rate depression year over year. We run our GRIs at this time every year. What does my sentiment look like?
Yeah.
Do I have as much leverage now as I will, et cetera? So run your GRI when you've got a high origin score for a carrier. If you're a shipper and they're starting to come at you with a GRI, you look in here and you say, okay, what's our origin score? Lane score, it's a 40. I'm gonna negotiate that GRI back down.
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And like you said before, you've got your give and take, and you could do it intelligently.
And I don't want to present it like it's some sort of like back and forth. This is a good tool to build a relationship with. It's not
Absolutely.
It's not simply just like, oh, I've got you this time.
No, you can educate your customers, and there's many of our clients that utilize the data within SOANR and these to help educate their customers and that value add.
And
knowing what's going on in the market.
We used to have this discussion back in my pricing day about how, hey, Mike, why don't we do a targeted GRI instead of this just blanket garbage? And again, this was LTL, and I wanted to be like, okay, I would much rather line up our needs and maybe win some more freight and lanes that we need more of, versus just saying, okay, 5% here, 3%, or 3% all over the country. Obviously, that's the quickest and dirtiest way to do something, but I was more interested
the targeted ones. But I mean, we did those, and they took it was a year-long process.
They take forever.
It never stopped because we didn't have this.
But you could, that's exactly right.
I didn't have this. It took forever.
Now I could be like, hey, Mike, we have
time to do it.
We got leverage in this market here. We can actually give them concessions in other lanes that we don't necessarily need a lot
exactly.
of.
That's what I'm saying.
And you build your network in a much more balanced and methodical way, and I think that's a lot more effective way of doing it.
Well, and you're not just going over and saying, hey, we need this. Hey, look, this is where the market's going. This is and here are the pressures and why we need to do this.
And and if you're a shipper and this pops up and you see, man, I really need a lot of my freight comes out of the Seattle market. I've got a lot of leverage there. They're trying to give me a 5% all over the country. Mm-hmm. Maybe I say, okay, I need you to pull back on Seattle, but I'll give you Los Angeles, or name some other market that you don't have as much leverage on at that given moment in time, and it may be an overall win for the carrier and you. So it's like a nice win-win scenario.
Absolutely. And and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we look at the second one down here, it's Long Beach to Dallas, and you can see that it's a plus 6.42% in 6 months. Okay, 6.42% increase in cost is fairly significant.
Yes.
So you're looking at this and you're a shipper. Could you not use this to proactively go and say, okay, wait a minute. If this is at 10, 12% or something like this, I'm looking at a possibility of falling out of my routing guide with my contracted carriers, so I should get ahead of this right now and negotiate something that's more in the 3% increase in the next 6 months or something like that to try.
Exactly. That's a great use case. I didn't think of that.
So the last part about this, we only have about 8 minutes left, is we're looking at current rate, and then we're looking at 6 months, and we can discuss the rates if we want to here, or I can bring up the predictive rates and kind of dig in, show them we have the Reefer rates now. They're in the predictive rates, but trying to talk about what those rates are.
Yeah, I think
jumping in there.
Yeah, I think we do need to reiterate what these rates mean, what they are, how to look at them, how to view them.
Let me just. We can do it. We can do it here. We've got rates pulled up, but I'd like to pull up the predictive rates here just so that the folks have a view of what we're talking about. We're looking at here, and it has Chicago to Atlanta, and that's good enough. We don't need to change that around, but you can change your origins, and actually you can type in your destinations and origins yourself, and you can come in here. You can use FreightWaves Scientific for your this is for your fuels. It does the fuel surcharge, et cetera. You could put in your own fuel surcharge if you want to, and look at these rates,
we made
all in or not. Or you can click here and move over to Reefer, and it'll give you your Reefer rates. So let's just look at let's just talk about rates here.
Let's just talk about rates for a second, because I think it's valuable. The way you view these isn't like looking at a DAT or a truckstop.com. These are not those rates. Those are average market rates based on a sample size of, however much that DAT reports there. Maybe it's 5 reports from 11 companies, or more than likely vice versa. But
because they're voluntary reports.
Yeah, these are voluntary reports, and they're based on literally people that are talking about it's an average of rates. So the value of rates is that it's going to give you an idea. A lot of people look at rates, and that's, obviously it's very valuable to look at rates. These are not an average of a market rate. So it's not 15 companies reporting these rates. This is a scientifically generated rate based off of a base of assumed cost. That's why we get that low, median, and high trucking, that carrier cost in there as the base. Then we add on top of it a bunch of market level data.
Market conditions.
Yes, so
supply,
OTRIs,
demand, economics.
Head haul index, trucking flow, traffic, demographics, et cetera. And, the real value of this is that this is, if you're a broker out there or a shipper, this is more representative of a true buy-side rate. So this is what you want to purchase your transportation at. This is what, the market is telling you, that you can go out there and more than likely negotiate to this rate. It's not a sell-side rate if you're a broker, so you don't want to necessarily use it. And that's what a lot of those DAT and truckstop.com rates are sell-side rates.
Yeah.
They're rates
sell-side rates.
They're rates coming from, a broker.
You're a broker.
Or carrier.
This is what you should be paying a carrier.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and it's not the same thing at all. So
right.
Obviously, brokers try to, that's their whole game is to make margins. And not that the carrier isn't, but at the same time, brokers will sell a higher rate, negotiating a lower rate. And that's the whole mechanism.
That's the whole arbitrage game, right?
And so our rates are they more closely resemble a buy rate for the market.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, it's cost, which we have that information.
Right. And the advantage of having this type of rate in there versus, say, a DAT or something like, or a market average, is basically saying, okay, it's based on things like tender rejections and head haul indexes that measure freight flows as they are. And a tender rejection rate, a tender rejection is 1. Doesn't matter if it's going for 30% higher or 5% higher. It's 1 tender rejection.
It's 1 rejection, yeah.
You can quote a load on a board for 30% higher, and the rest of those loads are going at only 5% higher, but it skews the average to the high side versus what you can actually see. So the tender rejection is a lot more objective. Head haul, obviously, a lot more objective.
Really, really good point.
Yeah. So you're talking about a much more scientific process here, something that, we've translated tender rejections and stuff into dollars and cents. Yeah. And that's in the form of carrier cost. So, how that kind of relates is carriers can view like 1 tender rejection rate, 1 basis point higher tender rejection rate could be the equivalent of a roughly 50% less deadhead miles coming out of a market or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the way that you would want to think about it if you were a carrier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's looking at the cost, it's looking at the market conditions, it's taking into account, which we always talk about, is the carrier's optionality in there as well. Are there other options for them to go get freight, which drives up price?
That's exactly right.
So all those sentiment type of things, kind of, right? They have better things they can go do.
Right. Or you can
which
get
will drive up cost.
And again, in those sell side rates, you're talking about carrier network bias, where you can have certain carriers that need Dallas to Chicago that day because they're overbought, and they need to get out there.
Or every carrier out of South Florida.
Yeah. So that could skew the rates as well. Tender rejection rates don't care. They're basically giving you an average of the, whatever that market is. They're giving you the average, equally distributed sentiment.
Excellent. Yeah. No, very good. Thank you for that. I thought it was a need to kind of go through there. I mean, it's very cool. We have reefer rates in there, and that is a big announcement. Yeah. We have van rates. Now we have the refrigerated in there as well, and that's excellent. But really, people understanding exactly what those rates are and the differences is very important, because it is a significant difference, as you just pointed out.
Yeah, and again, these are reefer rates, so they're going to have a premium associated with them. They are the beta version of what we're going to offer, and this is, of course, the early stages of anything. You've got to run through some testing processes. Everything I ever created, I had to do a couple of dry runs before I got it to the right spot. And the reefer rates are essentially the same thing, but with a reefer premium added on to it.
Yeah, which makes sense. You've got to run the reefer unit.
Yeah.
And they're much more expensive.
They are significantly more expensive.
So one of the other things, we only I don't know how much time, we have 1 minute left. I was just told in my ear we have 1 minute left. I'm just going to bring up this ocean, and we can talk to this as we kind of go out. I really thank you for coming on today and going through this, because I think the significance of this release was really I don't know if it wasn't undersold at all, but I don't know if the people got it, because it's not this 3D maps and that type of stuff. It's really good data, very useful stuff.
Saves you a bunch of time, and effort and energy. Gets you kicked off on the right foot, as well as giving you a nice, objective, clean data source. But
quickly here, if they'll put this up on the screen, we got 30 seconds left. If you put this up on the screen, so this is significant for 2 reasons. This is the ocean dashboard, and at 2 reasons, I'm going to say, and I'm sure you're gonna agree, it's moving away from tickers. And this is not customs data. These are shipments that are booked and not even on the ocean yet.
You're basically looking into the future.
Looking into the future. Zach, thank you so much. We'll get into this at another show. Everybody, thank you for watching. Until next Thursday, peace and love. Have a great weekend.